talking. Make sure you have water and your hand out. Thank you, everyone. I welcome every one of you. Okay, Anne, please take it away.
Good morning, everyone. It's so terrific to have you here this morning on our final session of the maiden voyage of this REALD data rollout training. We're really excited to have you. It looks like we've got about 75 people now, which is awesome. And I'm sure there will be some more folks who are joining us. I just want to welcome you on behalf of the Community Services and Supports team. And thank you guys. You guys are such terrific partners from our AAAs and our SILs and all of the network partners who work with them. So thank you so much for taking a couple hours excuse me, out of your morning to be here with us and find out about the rollout for our REALD data collection. So Miguel, I think we can, perfect. I'll just say Miguel and then you'll know time to change the slide. So just a few housekeeping things for us. If you are able to, if you have the technology capability, please turn your camera on. Even if you go off and on, that's great. It makes it a lot better for Miguel so that he's looking out at human faces and not just black screen. I think you guys have all done a terrific job at this so far. Just keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. However, if you want to say something, please unmute yourself and talk away. Miguel is happy to have people ask questions. And so I think he feels like the more, and he'll explain this, the more conversational this is, the better for everybody. We will be monitoring the chat box, so please feel free to share things in the chat if that works best for you, if you'd rather do that than unmute. I also want to let you know that we are tracking all of the questions that will come in the chat box. So if for some reason you type a question into the chat box and we don't have the time to answer it during the training, we will be using all of those questions to create a frequently asked questions document, an FAQ document that we'll send out to everyone. Excuse me, that we'll send out to everyone so that all of your questions will be able to be answered. If you want to say something and you would like to raise your hand to do so, you are welcome to do so. Down at the bottom of your screen, if you're not familiar with Zoom, you will see a little white happy face, and that has the word reactions under it. If you click on that, you'll see a variety of reactions that you can have. So you can raise your hand, you can put in different emojis like a thumbs up or clapping or things like that, or a heart. So occasionally Miguel will say, after someone has spoken, he'll say, let's give Cassandra some love. So then you can, do one of these reactions if you want to. Also in that bottom row of little icons, you'll see one that is a rectangle and it has a CC written on it and it says closed caption underneath. If you would like to have closed captioning, you can just click on that and the closed caption will show up. The other thing you can do is look in your list of participants and you'll see our ASL interpreters there. So if you would like to pin the ASL interpreters to your screen, you can do that as well if you'd like to be watching them signing in real time. Also wanted to let you know we are going to have some breakout sessions at the end of this. I know that it'll be about the last half hour. I know that it'll be really tempting for some of you to think, okay, I'm just gonna leave now and not participate in the breakouts because I've got 84 emails and 16 people I need to call. And please stick around for the breakout sessions because they are going to be your chance to practice asking these questions and to talk in smaller groups about what this feels like and what concerns you have and things like that. So I think the next thing that we have, because this is such important work and such an important training for you to have and for us to be embarking on this together. Mike McCormick, who's the Interim Director of Aging and People with Disabilities, has recorded a message for all of you. So I think that's queued up now. Here we go.
I'm Mike McCormick, and I'm currently serving as the Interim Director for the Aging and People with Disabilities program within the Oregon Department of Human Services. I'm thrilled to welcome you to the introductory training about race, ethnicity, language, and differing ability data collection, also known as REALD. We're so fortunate to have you as partners and are committed to supporting your collection of REALD data. Not only because the collection is required by law, but having this data will allow us to serve Oregonians better. The more we know about our consumers, the better we're going to be able to provide the services and supports in an equitable and person-centered fashion. REALD data can help us achieve that goal. We recognize that asking the REALD questions will be a big change. Asking these questions may feel uncomfortable at first. However, asking these questions in a respectful, compassionate, and inquisitive manner will build trust with the consumers that we serve. The gathered information from this work will help us break down the barriers of systemic racism, which have traditionally affected underserved communities from receiving services and supports to help them live their best lives. So once again, thank you in advance for actively participating in this training and personally engaging in the REALD data collection effort. We appreciate your ongoing commitment to serving all Oregonians equitably and ensuring they live with equity, independence, choice, and dignity. Thank you.
So I want to point out something that Mike said. He talked about actively participating in the training. And I hope that this training is unlike a lot of trainings that you've experienced before, in that Miguel is an amazing facilitator and really wants to get you involved. So he's going to be asking you to put a lot of things in the chat so that it really is as much like a conversation as possible. I've been in a lot of trainings, and he does such a good job of really including everyone. And I hope you'll take advantage of that and really let yourself enjoy this next couple of hours, even though this can be a challenging topic. So on that note, I wanted to share with you some community agreements and invite you to add to these if you'd like to, through the chat or by unmuting. So just a few things. We talked about being present during the meeting. Please participate. If you hear something that you're not sure about or that you might disagree with, try to default to inquiry over judgment. Try to be respectful in language. If you're someone like me who tends to talk, try to lean back a little bit and give others an opportunity. If you're someone who tends to be quiet and not participate, give it a try. This is a safe space for everybody, and we want to encourage you to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. If you need to use the restroom, let your dog out, get some more coffee, go grab a piece of cake, please go for it. We're all adults and we know that you have needs, so just go for it and come back when you know, in a couple minutes. And of course, letting people complete their thoughts and not interrupting. So here are the topics that we'll be including in the next about hour and 45 minutes. We are going to talk about diversity within older adult and disability populations in Oregon. We'll talk about service equity to sort of define what service equity means within the context of this training so that everyone's on the same page. We'll talk about some of the things that impact service equity and our ability to serve people equitably. And then we'll talk about the REALD data and how we're going to use that data to help us provide better services to all Oregonians in an equitable way. So for those of you who don't know, REALD stands for race, ethnicity, language, and either disability or differing ability. And that term is really a personal choice for any person. So you could, you may be in a position where you'd use either term depending on the person's preference. It's a demographic data standard that was initiated by Oregon community leaders. As you know, we're collecting race and ethnicity data right now, but very broad categories. For example, we have one category that is Hispanic or Latino or Latinx. But this REALD really expands upon those and allows us to know a little bit more about the richness and detail and specifics within lots of different communities. REALD standards became law as a result of House Bill 2134 and that passage in 2013, and became part of our ODHS policy in 2020. So I hope that by the end of this, you have a really strong understanding of why we're doing this, and you feel the same commitment that we all do to collecting this data. It is a legal requirement, but more important than that, it's really going to help us identify some of the inequities that are avoidable, things like implicit bias, racism, ableism, language access, and really try to help us address some of the unique inequalities that happen as a result of intersectionality of different aspects of people's lives. We really want to better understand and identify some of the culturally specific barriers that can happen to our ability to serve people equitably. We are human services, and that means we want to serve all humans, and we want to serve them all equitably. We want every person in Oregon we serve to be able to live their best life. And that's really what we're trying to do here. So I hope you enjoy this next hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes. Thank you again so much for being here and for all the great work that you do. And I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful, charismatic host, Miguel Valenciano. And here we go.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. And can everybody give Anne some love? She did an amazing job introducing the session, the objectives, right, the topics, why we're here, building the foundation. So I'm very honored, Anne, for that. And I'm welcoming every one of you to this wonderful interactive session. May I invite you please to consider this. If for some reason you're having some technical difficulties, can you continue being calm? And if the system gets you kicked out, just come down, come back again, use that link to come back to the session. If something happens to my Wi-Fi too, we have an amazing team. By the way, I want to recognize them all. There are about 10 people here in this meeting today who have working diligently to design and to provide this session. So I'm very grateful for your company today. Also, take some notes. We're going to cover a lot of information. So, do it your way, the way you will remember this. And also, I'm going to put something in chat. I as a citizen of the world, I keep on carving the best version of myself. And so whatever you are going to be learning today, know that you're going to be supporting Oregonians, our incredible consumers. So I welcome you and I wish you an amazing time with each other. So can you tell me in chat, give me a feeling. How are you feeling right now? Give me a feeling in chat. How are you feeling right now? Give me a word that describes excited. Thank you, Sonia. And with an exclamation mark. She goes, let's go. Okay, great, Lori. We have many others that are coming in. By the way, we have Deb and Lacey here who are going to help me monitor chat. Also, Cass will come in and also intervene. Engage, important, goofy, ready to learn, amazing. Keep chatting away. We have 79 so I'll chat entries. All right, awesome. Keep chatting away. We know that the state of Oregon, right, keeps on becoming much more diverse. I'd like to ask you now, what have you noticed about Oregon's population when it comes to race and ethnicity? Can you tell me in chat, can you tell each other, what have you noticed about the population of Oregon when it comes to race and ethnicity? Okay, more people are being pushed out of Portland, specifically Black people, minorities, people of color. Thank you, Sonia. What about others? Very white. Thank you, Susan. What about other people? What have you noticed when it comes to race and ethnicity? More homelessness. Thank you, Deborah. More people to learn from. Isn't that beautiful, Kathy? Christina says disparities. Absolutely. Christina, do you mind opening your mic for a second? Christina
Absolutely.
Duarte. Hey,
Hi.
Christina. Hello, Christina. Can you tell us why you, and I agree with you, you said disparities. Can you give us an example of a disparity?
Yes, I just think that, there's disparities, specifically health disparities. And just, sometimes it just can be health literacy. There's a lot of the population that may not be able to read or write English or even in their own language. So, yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Christina, I picked on you and you deliver results. Everybody, let's clap for Christina.
Oh,
Thank you very, yes. Today is about bringing your whole self to this presentation. And you can tell right away that we are going to be engaging every one of us. So I know that our incredible state of Oregon, right? The population keeps on changing as we speak. Now, if you notice this particular graph, you see percentages attached to various groups. If you notice, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, has 0%. At the same time, I do know, like you do know, that we still have representation in the state of Oregon from that particular group of individuals who describe themselves with this particular racial category. Question to you. Yes. How many people that identify themselves as Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders live in the state of Oregon? Just give me a number, please, in chat. My pleasure, Maria Park. Thank you for giving a shout out to the facilitators. 2,000, Diana, 1,000 from Mara Romero, and he says, 5,000 from Jen, 1,500. Thank you for guessing. This is just an opportunity to put yourself out there. And if you don't know, say IDK in chat, IDK, I don't know, IDK. Okay, thank you, Kayla. One of the characteristics of culturally agile people is to recognize that we don't have all the information, like I don't have all the information. Approximately 13,000 people, adults who identify themselves with this particular racial category. So point is, every one of us matters, right? Every one of us matters. Our culture matters, right? And if we are consumer, right, we need to make sure that we are going to meet you where you are and keep your dignity and preserve, right, your respect in the way we're going to be collecting data, specifically REALD questions. So if you look at this particular graph, right, this illustrates languages other than English spoken by adults in Oregon. If you yourself speak a second language, can you tell us in chat? My native language is Spanish. Okay, Spanglish, Tom. Thank you. I love that word, Spanglish. Spanish, Christina. Olga says Russian. We have Maria who speaks Korean, Cantonese, Elki, excuse me, Catalan. Nice. From Barcelona, Jen. We have Spanish from Laura and Ina from Spanglish and Spanish native is English. how I work with Russian and German interpreters. As you can see, we have an amazing representation of different languages, all the way from English to Spanish, Spanglish, Korean, Cantonese, Russian, Catalan, and so forth. So if you look at these numbers, right, there are thousands of individuals, right, who speak particular some of those examples of languages that you alluded to. Examples of other Indo-European languages are German, French, and Urdu. Examples of Asian or Pacific Island languages, we have Tagalog, which is one of the major languages of PI, the Philippines. We have Mandarin as well, and we have Samoan, like from American Samoa. Now, when it comes to individuals who describe themselves as having a different ability or a disability, ages 18 plus in the state of Oregon, you can tell that 17% identify themselves as having a disability. More folks, more than 500,000 people have various disability types, right? For example, I have my difficulty with my eyes, right? Some people might have a disability type that includes self-care, right? Disability, or independent living difficulty. If you yourself identify and you're willing to share, can you share that in chat, please, for us? And if you're comfortable describing the type of disability that you have, if you're comfortable sharing. I like when people ask me so that, my needs can be met. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. Thank you for your vulnerability, Dan. I really appreciate that. So remember this, folks. We are here to make sure that the more information we receive, the better services we're going to provide to Oregonians, right? In a way that they are going to feel respected by you in ways of collecting REALD data. As you can see, 5.6% of Oregon's total population identify themselves as LGBT. Now, notice that this 5.6% number does not include queer, intersex, or other dimensions under this particular rainbow, right? Now, this is taking me now and us to a term called intersectionality. Can you tell us in your own words, and by the way, thank you, Sonia and Mara and Rachel, who also included examples, and Diana, of different abilities. I appreciate that very much. Now, can you tell us your definition of intersectionality? Can you tell us in your own words what that means to you? Okay, Sonia says how race and gender meet. Okay, thank you. What about other people? Thank you, Sonia. What about other participants? What is the meaning of intersectionality? Chloe says the ways different identities and levels of privilege interact. Thank you very much. And Sue says no idea. Again, if you don't know, right, just write IDK. I don't know. Kathy says we overlap. Jeannie says, I don't know. No one is just their gender, race, ability, level, education, Diana. They're a combination of all those identifiers. Okay, Chloe, do you mind opening your mic for a second?
Sure.
Excellent. Can you expand on your definition?
I can try.
Okay, cool.
So people all have different identities and categories or whatever that we tick, and the way that those different identities play with each other and with the world around us is how intersectionality works in my understanding. So you can be like, I'm a white person, but I'm also a disabled person and a queer person. So it's different levels anyway.
And you know what, you did beautifully, and I want to say thank you very much, because My next question was going to be, are you comfortable describing some of your identities, right, in your intersectionality? So we show up at the intersection, right? I show up and I'm happy, I'm smiling, I come to work, and boom, all of a sudden I might be hit at the intersection, right? And I don't even know that people are making assumptions about my invisible intersectionality, right? So let's then continue playing with this particular definition. You have this in your handout, right? This is a term that comes from Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, and you're gonna, in a minute, gonna be exposed to a very fun short video. But if you notice on the left of the slide, those are what we call cultural identities, right? And a lot of these identities are actually invisible, and they play a major role in people's lives. And they're very important to people, right? And when they are combined, right, and when people are not treated respectfully, they're going to be compounded. So let's listen to a video, or let's watch a video that will help us really understand intersectionality.
What is intersectionality? Intersectionality is a way of understanding social relations by examining intersecting forms of discrimination. This means acknowledging that social systems are complicated and that many forms of oppression, like racism, sexism, and ageism, might be present and active at the same time in a person's life. Everyday approaches to building equality tend to focus on one type of discrimination, for instance, sexism, and then work to address only that specific concern. But while the career of a young, white, and able-bodied woman might improve with gender equality protections, an older, black, disabled lesbian may continue to be hampered by racism, ageism, ableism, and homophobia in the workplace. Intersectionality is about understanding and addressing all potential roadblocks to an individual or group's well-being. But it's not as simple as just adding up oppressions and addressing each one individually. Racism, sexism, and ableism exist on their own, but when combined, they compound and transform the experience of oppression. Intersectionality acknowledges that unique oppressions exist, but is also dedicated to understanding how they change in combination. The roots of intersectionality lie within the Black feminist movement, with legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw originating the term. Crenshaw felt that anti-racist and feminist movements were both overlooking the unique challenges faced by Black women. She stated that legislation about race is framed to protect Black men, and legislation about sexism is understood to protect white women. So simply combining racism and sexism together does not therefore protect Black women. Intersectional theory is now applied across a range of social divisions and also to understandings of domination, such as those associated with whiteness, masculinity, and heterosexuality. Intersectionality is not only about multiple identities, and it's not a simple answer to solving problems around equality and diversity. It is, however, an essential framework as we truly engage with issues around privilege and power and work to bring them into the open. Intersectionality means listening to others, examining our own privileges, and asking questions about who may be excluded or adversely affected by our work. As importantly, it means taking measurable action to invite, include, and centre the voices and work of marginalised individuals.
Thank you so much for listening. May I invite you, please, to tell us in chat what stood out for you from this particular video on intersectionality. What stood out for you? What's a takeaway for you? Ask more questions. Thank you, Christina Ball. Very important to ask questions, right? What about others? What stood out for you? The one solution does not fit everyone. Absolutely, Bobby. Bobby, you just took me to that platinum rule, right? There's the golden rule: do unto others as you would like to do unto yourself. And you know, if we are alike, it's going to work. But we know that we are very unique individuals, right? No two people are alike, so we need to treat them the way they want to be treated, and that's called the platinum rule. the history of this work. Absolutely, Susan. Kathy says creating equity is complex and not an easy fix. Absolutely. So you can see, right, that one of the opportunities that we have is to bring this into the open and to recognize our own privilege and recognize our power so that we can really seek to understand. So that takes us now to the word equity, right? If you look at this particular visual here, right, you probably have seen variations of what equity is via an image. Our goal, right, is to successfully provide services to all Oregonians because we cannot serve everyone the same. You mentioned that in chat, right? And we need to meet our goal. So we must. So now this is when I'm going to ask you please to start taking some notes if you haven't started yet. Keep a list of tools, right, that will help you ask real deep questions in a very respectful manner. One of them is to adapt. So I would write the word adapt. And this is when we need to flex. We must adapt our service delivery approaches so that we can serve everyone in the way they want to receive services. And that's actually called equity. Don't treat everyone the same. Now, by looking at this definition of service equity, you can see here, right, that not only we have services, but also we have to really understand and acknowledge history or historical inequities. Can you tell me in chat an example of a historical or a historic inequity in the state of Oregon? Okay, redlining, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chloe. What about others? An example of historic inequity in Oregon. Home loans not granted to people of color. Yep, I've done a lot of research about that. Diana, Sonia says African American not being allowed to purchase property. So again, think about how you and I have been exposed to history in our lives, from what point of view, and how is this impacting service equity. The following slides that I'm going to present to you will highlight certain factors and circumstances that impact an Oregonian's experience in receiving services from us, right? Obviously, we just talked about historical and potentially current policies and procedures that can totally impact who we serve and how we serve them. You see there, for example, treaties, tribal nations, Civil Rights Act, just to mention a few. Know also that in addition to that, we Oregonians, right, or people who reside in Oregon, we have assumptions about working with governmental entities. Can you name in chat an assumption that some Oregonians might have when working with governmental entities? Can you maybe recognize or just mention a phrase, things you've heard when working with governmental entities or agencies? Not lack of trust. Thank you, April. I know we have quite a few here. I can't wait to hear from everyone. Please contribute to the presentation. Nobody will help me. Sonia says, nobody will help me, but they will others. Okay, gotcha. Lack of trust. Thank you, Tom. Red tape, Deborah. They're coming very quickly here. They will report to immigration. So please don't, they will call the police, or do not call the police corruption. Guess what, folks? Can you please write in your notes, create an environment of trust, right? It's our responsibility to create an environment of trust. So asking real deep questions will require that people feel that they can trust us. So in addition to examples of historical trauma, and we mentioned a few, for example, it can be at the Holocaust or forced migration or the violent colonization of Native Americans. Can anybody give me an example of individual trauma that you personally have experienced in your life journey? Remember that individual trauma is an event or a series of events that can occur to just one person, right? And it can be, again, a single event like being mugged or being attacked, physically attacked, or it can be a workplace related injury, or it can be a multiple prolonged series of events in our lives, such as microaggressions on a daily basis. Anybody comfortable here acknowledging that you have been the recipient of individual trauma? Anybody comfortable? If you have, just say, Mara, please, can you open your mic, Mara Romero?
I just thought about this one recently, actually. I was in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, and my grandfather and I were just talking about it the other day. He actually was down in Oakland, California, and was like trying to help folks who were trapped in the freeway. But anyway, I think anywhere you were during that earthquake, it was pretty terrifying. I was a little kid. My brother and I were playing in the backyard. And yeah, it's just, I mean, nothing terrible directly happened to me that day, but even just being adjacent to a trauma like that was, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in a while. And I was like, that was a big trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Mara, and I thank you for your vulnerability, for displaying, for sharing. And again, we don't come to work and we don't have our consumers coming to us and telling us about things like that. Those are most of the time invisible examples of trauma. Absolutely. Everybody, please clap for Mara. Give her some love, please. We have also violent death of a family member, Chloe. Unfortunately, yeah, one of my nephews 4 years ago was violently murdered. Just, you know, he was just going on his motorcycle. And so, yeah, that happens, and it creates a tremendous impact. I was also, Jesse, in New York City on September the 11th myself, just 20 blocks away from the Twin Towers. And I was doing a session, you know, like this, you know, and somebody came and yelled 9 words. I just saw a plane hit one of the towers. And I just said, can you please stop, you know, joking about things like that? And of course, you and I and the world know what took place on that particular day. So I want to say thank you. Can you clap for everyone, please, who have been so vulnerable to share about personal situations, right, or individual trauma. This is what makes this really real, because we're trying for you and I to connect. If we are going to collect real data, we need to understand ourselves so that we can understand others, right? That's called emotional intelligence. Examples of collective data, right? That refers to the psychological reactions to a traumatic event, which can be also 9/11, which can be COVID, right? The world is going through that. Vicarious trauma, this is a process of change, right? Resulting from being extremely empathetic, right? When we engage in a very empathetic way with trauma survivors, right? And so what's another way that service equity impacts our consumers? Education, right? Access to education and the level of education achieved by an individual can totally impact their understanding of what services are available and how to navigate governmental systems and institutions. Food access, I mean, we all need food, access to food. I love my cultural food, right? So access to food can impact an individual and our mission to provide services in the way an Oregonian wants to receive them. For example, congregate meal sites, housing, right? We all need housing. Where someone is housed, right? If they are housed at all, that greatly impacts what resources are available to them and how they interact with services and supports. I'm thinking of a specific example is when someone is not housed, when somebody is unhoused and they apply for services, where are we going to send them their paperwork? Okay, how about infrastructure, transportation, accessible buildings, strong broadband service so that you can attend this session, for example, right? All of that impacts someone's ability to interact with our system, socioeconomic status. Most of the people who are determined eligible for services and supports are of a lower socioeconomic status. So I'd like to ask, is anybody here comfortable sharing if you personally have been impacted when you have been on the other side of the desk by lack of service equity? Anybody comfortable sharing with the class how you personally, when you have been on the other side of the desk, how you have been impacted by service inequity, lack of service equity?
I was a number of years ago, back in the 70s, I was living in Alaska, and I applied for food benefits because we needed food, obviously. And I was spoken to and spoken down to because I was $2 over the standard, and basically made to feel, why in the world did I apply for benefits? That was so embarrassing, and it was horrible to go through.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I'm going to give you a hard because I got goosebumps. You know, we can be short, whatever. What I'm hearing, right, Lisan, is how we respond, right? Yes, I'm short $2, but it's how we respond. Can you please in your notes write styled? You know, is your style creating inclusion or is your style creating exclusion? So everybody, please give Lisan some love. May I encourage you to do that? All right. Can anybody then share an example of how service equity impacted you positively so that we can also address the other side of the coin, the positive side? And then thank you, Christina, for again, no one spoke Spanish, okay, in the Arizona offices where you went. Thank you for your vulnerability. Rachel, thank you for mentioning that. Thank you, Sonia, for mentioning about frustration when it comes to lack of resources for DV victims. We prioritize limited English proficiency cases at legal aid, okay. Anybody comfortable when you were impacted positively because you receive amazing service equity? Thank you, Olga. I guess the point is this, folks, right? I don't know about you. There's an amazing, actually we lost her, Maya Angelou, an amazing poet, right, in the US, who said, people might forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So think about how, when you're asking REALD data, when you're collecting, how are you going to come across, right? I know you will come out across as a mindful, inclusive, vulnerable, compassionate being, right? That's how you're going to come out, as a mindful, compassionate, humble being, where we keep people's dignity and respect intact. And so then the point is, right, that we are going to use REALD to collect data. To collect this data is very important to the state of Oregon because it does identify health inequities among populations that we work with and serve. And this actual data, right, real data, are going to help us measure the magnitude of disproportionate effects and identify the populations in the state of Oregon that are experiencing these inequities. And this is going to help us, this data is going to help us develop, right, potentially culturally specific and accessible services. Now, you're probably asking yourselves, Okay, how are we going to do this? One way to do this is to utilize a person-centered approach. Can you say me in chat if you know what a person-centered approach is? Can you tell me, say me in chat if you're comfortable? Or say not me, I don't know what a center approach is. Thank you, Nikisha. Okay, thank you, Sonia. You said, I don't know. Okay, again, I am trying for you to normalize when we don't know something, just say, I don't know, right? Instead of assuming that we do know, right? So support systems for older adults and people with disabilities are actually embracing people-centered approaches or principles. And these principles are really cool. They're dedicated, right, to the idea that individuals should have the power to define and pursue their own vision for a good life. I mean, that's what I call empowerment, right? And this approach emphasizes quality of life. I mean, who doesn't want quality of life, right? Who doesn't want well-being? And who doesn't want informed choice? I do. I'm pretty sure you do. That's my assumption. So it is a way to learn about the choices and interests that make up a good life. So our approach to asking any question will determine the response. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. Our approach, right? Our individual approach to asking any question will determine the response. Some questions can sound like accusations. I'm pretty sure you have gone to require services or a loan or something, and the questions were asked in a way that impacted you, right? And you felt disrespected by people. So very important that we ask questions from a place of curiosity and positivity. And that will help the consumer know that we're genuine, right, in asking questions, real deep questions, and not just checking off mandatory boxes. We truly want to know, right, about the individuals that we serve. Tell me yes or no in chat. Have you ever met someone in a governmental entity that doesn't want to work there, but they work there? Say yes or no. Okay. Okay. Obviously, we don't want that reputation, right? We want to make sure that we come out respectful when asking these questions. So may I suggest then, stay present. Don't lose sight of the purpose, right? We're here to serve our consumers, to serve Oregonians. And this particular real deep questions are going to support us creating systems and processes so that we can tell them, right, and give them services in a way that matters to them, where they don't experience inequities. So don't lose sight of the purpose, better identify, better understand, right, and better develop culturally specific and accessible services in partnership with the communities that we are here to serve. So very important to manage our triggers, right? Notice what you notice with your diversity lenses, because remember, people have obviously places in intersectionality. So REALD responses are actually self-reported, right? So having consumers describe themselves in their own words is at the core of a person-centered approach. REALD offers flexibility, right? Let me have you write that down, please. Right, be flexible. REALD offers flexibility by including open-ended questions and multiple choice answers. And also, REALD also uses a person-centered approach in the wording of questions. So rather than asking, for example, if a person is disabled, are you disabled? Instead of doing that, we ask questions about the functional abilities of a being. So personal choice and personal control is also honored when a consumer declines to respond to a question. So remember this, we don't need to interrogate our callers, right? Conversation is key. Can you please write that down, please? Conversation is key. Just like I practiced with you at the beginning of this session, right? Please avoid rapid fire questions. Slow down, allow consumers to ask a follow-up question if they have one. And also, if you notice today, right, quite a few of you are interjecting stories in chat or they opening your mic, right, based on my invitation, and you are illustrating with the story behind a response. So consumers might do that. Give them the floor, please, to share their story. And also make sure that you balance the head on the heart, right? Because you have to also complete the task by collecting data so you can move things along, right? But do not rush the people to the point that it just becomes like check on the box. When you listen, right? Listening is so important. When you listen to what consumers share with you, you might discover additional ways you can help. For example, if a consumer shares that they no longer do much cooking, right? Maybe they could benefit from home delivered meals or in-home services. You might need to ask them follow-up questions. That means, the third piece here in the slide is it's very important to change the way we see things, right? There's like French-Cuban writer, Anais Nin, that says, we see things as we are, not as they are. So changing your perspective will help you asking demographic questions that potentially might make you feel uncomfortable, but understanding the whole person will help you find ways to bring more value into people's lives, right? That's at the core of a person-centered approach. And you might also learn something about yourself. All right, so we are at about 51 minutes into the session. So I'd like to open the floor now in case you have any specific questions before we take a very well-deserved bio break. I guess what I'm trying to ask you is am I making sense? Say yes or no. Am I making sense to you? Okay. If anybody thinks that I'm going too fast or I'm, whatever, just let me know, right? Anybody? I heard a voice. Anybody?
Hi,
yes.
Miguel. This is Deb. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I wanted to. There was a question in the chat that I wanted to bring up. I'll just read it to you. It's a little long. I'll just read it.
Please do so.
I appreciate the intent of REALD, but consider this. I have well-educated, intelligent friends who do not work for or with the state. When some of these issues arise, gender identity, race, ethnicity, status, etc., it is like we are not even speaking the same language. These are people with whom I am very close. How much more difficult will it be to connect with random strangers on the phone? Additionally, I know there are communities in my service area who rarely, if ever, contact us. How will asking more and more intrusive questions encourage these communities to seek services?
Beautiful question, Deb. Thank you for taking the time to allude that. And who is the person who asked the question?
Sorry, I muted myself and then had trouble getting off. Dan Curtis.
Dan Curtis. Dan, can you open your mic for a second, Dan?
Sure, go ahead.
Hey, Dan, lovely question. Do you have a camera so I can see you for just 10 seconds? There you go, Dan. Thank you. You are at the office. I can tell you're wearing a mask. One of the things I always do in my life, I've been working globally for 30 years of my life. And when it comes to, and I will bring this up on after session, but when it comes to asking questions specifically about race and ethnicity, a lot of people tend to become very uncomfortable. So my tool is I always try to become comfortable with discomfort. And then I always go to number 2 tool is do not lose sight of the purpose. Everybody's going to have opinions. Some people are going to feel uncomfortable. The purpose of REALD is very simple. Is what? What is the real purpose of Real D? If you don't mind, Brandy, can I pick on you since you're in my facilitators? What is the purpose of Real D?
Well, I think I'm cheating a little bit, but I think with Real D, the purpose is for us to gather the information with every single caller that we have coming in so that we can build equitable services for everyone and not just one particular group over the other.
Beautiful, Brandy. And also, you know, Dan, there are going to be people, Dan, that don't want to answer these questions. It's okay. You're going to do whatever it takes by asking the question, and whatever answer they give you, you're going to write their answer under other. I'll explain that after break, right, Dan? So become comfortable with discomfort. Know that the people are going to have opinions for everything in life. And sometimes people are going to give you opinions that we're not even asking for, right? But don't lose sight of the purpose. Why we're here? What is Real D questions? And or any others in the team, if you want to tackle that one as well, if you want to illustrate or embellish what I just said.
Well, I don't think there's I mean, I think it's a really good question. And Dan, I think it was brave of you to ask it, because, you know, here we are, we're all, you know, excited about this, and we're talking about how great it is to ask these questions, but it's true. There are going to be people out there who don't want to have these conversations with us. My hope is that over time, that will shift. But I don't want you to think that it's going to be easy in all cases. It's not. There will be people who don't want to embark in these conversations, and hopefully there are ways that we're trying to allow people to not answer them if they choose not to. But it's going to be bumpy for a little while. It's going to be an adjustment, and I don't want us to be false about that. So I think there are some hands up. So there are probably people who have more intelligent things to say than me.
No, I think Cass, and then I'm going to go to Mara.
I just wanted to also share that, yeah, I agree with everything that has been said, but we as the state of Oregon and in this work are not the only ones doing this. Healthcare professionals will also be doing this. And so more and more, regardless of whether or not you're seeking social services or you're just going to a medical provider, these questions are going to be out in the open. We're going to have more dialogue around them. And so eventually everyone will have some exposure to this, regardless of the comfort level we're required to. And so like Miguel mentioned, just getting comfortable being uncomfortable. This first year, probably very bumpy. Our next year, maybe a little less bumpy. But know that we aren't the only ones. And it sometimes feels like our job is already hard enough in social services, connecting with folks. Here we go, adding one more layer, but we're not alone. So just know that it's not just us.
Beautiful. We're going to take one more, and we're going to manage time. Mara Romero, thank you, Cass.
Yeah, I appreciate that acknowledgement. And I was just going to say that it's really built on a history of trauma that people have had with the system and trying to access services, because it has not been a person-centered approach. It's been very operationalized and bureaucratic. And honestly, I'm open to the idea of there being more options for people to explain who they are, and the people who have the sassy comments in response, I figured they'd probably give me those anyway. So again, I'm looking forward to having more options available to folks. But yeah, at the end of the day, I try not to take those responses personally, because again, social services has become very much like the DMV in a lot of ways. And we do need to reverse that and kind of build trust again with folks.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. Thank you very much. Yeah, it can be two things, right? Just like Dan alluded to. Hey, some people might be afraid that I don't want to come because you're going to be asking me questions that are very personal and I don't want to provide them. At the same time, again, don't lose sight of the purpose, why we're here, so that we can make better services for everyone, regardless of people's feelings and thoughts. I love what Maria said also in chat. Make sure that you explain to people why we're doing this, right? I love that Maria comment in chat. All right, folks, we are going to take a 1 function. I'm trying to manage my time because I have a lot to cover. We are going to take a 5-minute function break. And can you turn your cameras off? And I thank you for having your cameras on. And then when we come back at 5, turn them on. And so Cassandra, can you please tell me what time we're going to come back?
11:09.
11:09. Okay, awesome. Please stand up. It's good for the body. Keep hydrated. Welcome back, everyone. If you can please turn your camera on so that we know that you're back. Thank you so much. You're lovely. I can see you. Thank you very much. All right, so we are going to continue with our program. And by the way, you're doing great. I just gave you some love in chat. My mama used to say, give me some flowers when I'm alive, not when I'm dead. All right, so the previous section, right, the session that we just finished before the quick bio break, talked about why it is essential to gather information from our clients or consumers so that we can better understand and serve their needs. In this particular session now, I'm going to discuss REALD questions and how to ensure that we collect quality data. The data collection standards used by REALD actually bring recognition and visibility to everyone. So I'm going to cover how to collect, number one, how to collect high quality data, and number two, how to ask the REALD language, disability and race and ethnicity questions. To accurately identify service inequities and groups that may benefit from focused interventions, we need more granularity in the race, ethnicity, and language data that we collect. It's just necessary to do so, even though it might sound a little bit uncomfortable. We also need to ask additional questions within groups that can remain hidden unless we ask them. So we don't ask them, we will never know. And analyzing this data that we receive is going to help us look for patterns and trends to get a better insight into people's needs. And this can actually lead, like I said earlier, to policy changes and the development of community-centric interventions. Asking about self-care and independent living provides insight into lifestyle and quality of life. So asking REALD questions may require a lot of patience. May I invite you in your list of tools to write demonstrate patience? Demonstrate patience. Our goal is not to assist people in figuring out or with figuring out which checkbox they fit into, right? That's not a job, but to guide them through a series of questions that allows them to select the option that best describes how they see themselves. Now, because REALD data is self-reported, it is very important that the wording of questions and the categorization of responses be consistent. So may I invite you to write in your tool list, be consistent, right, with the wording of questions, be consistent. Now, questions should be asked exactly the same way they are phrased. Okay, let me repeat that again. Questions should be asked exactly the way they are phrased. Rephrasing any of these questions may change the way people answer. And these protocols ensure, right, that each question is being asked of every person or each person in the same way every time. Now, respondents, people who are responding, should be giving as much time. I already said that at the beginning of class, but should be giving enough time and support as needed to consider their options and choose a response. Their responses should never be coached or challenged, but to ensure responses are accurately, are recorded accurately, it may necessarily be, you probably need to clarify or confirm. So you should not make any assumptions about a person's ability to communicate. We are all, look at this right now, we're all beneficiary of technological advances that increase the possibility that any person you are speaking with may be using technology to participate in the call. Also, we should not make assumptions about people whom we perceive to be proficient of the English language. Never assume that someone or anyone will prefer to communicate in English across all modes. It is possible that a person who speaks multiple languages may express a language preference other than English for different modes of communication. I always give people the example that even though, English is my second language or English is a second language, I prefer to do my banking in my native language, Spanish. So real deep questions are very personal, right? We alluded to that a little bit before break. Dan had a great question. So it's important to prepare people for what they're going to ask them about. Maria alluded to, explain the purpose to people. So some people might fear their answers will affect their eligibility for support or quality of the services of care they might receive. So these or similar statements should be used to ensure people that we can be trusted. Remember, some of them don't trust governmental entities. So we want to make sure that we can be trusted with their information. So be certain to let people know, right? Let people know that we ask these questions of everyone, right? Very important. We ask these questions of everyone, and that no one is being singled out. So we should also inform people that we cannot tell them how to answer the questions, but we can describe their choices. Additional resources are available for asking questions, for you, and responding for those who are hesitant to answer. Cass will talk about this at the end of the session. Now that we have looked at why we collect REALD data, let's walk through the REALD questions, okay? And you have your handout, you can follow with me. So we'll begin with the language questions. REALD questions do not have to be asked, again, they don't have to be asked in a particular sequence, but we recommend beginning with the questions about language preferences, because how they respond, right, will help you assist them in determining whether a person desires the support of an interpreter. So do not rely on just listening for spoken accent or other perceived communications difficulties before asking a person's communication preferences. So we ask, what languages a person speaks at home, right? In plural. So what languages do you speak at home? And when a person specifies, for example, English only, right? So we just skipped to the disability section. If they specified a language other than English, right, we continue with the next question. And we ask, what language they prefer for phone communications and written materials. That's a very important one. So when they specified English for both, very simple, just skip to the disability section. When they specified a language other than English, we continue with the next question. So we then ask if an interpreter is needed to communicate, right? So when the response is yes, we ask what type of interpreter they prefer. And be certain, of course, that you understand the specifics, the individual's specific needs. And secondly, when the language spoken at home is not sign language, we ask how well they speak English and record their response. Based on stated preference for an interpreter, you then need to follow local procedures to arrange for an interpreter or interpreter services. Now, race, I know that, right, as a facilitator who does this globally in my work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I know that race and ethnicity are complex concepts, right? So questions about race and ethnicity are difficult to ask because it's very personal and it can be fluid, right? So we offered 7 specific categories and ask which describes an individual's racial or ethnic identity, and they may choose from more than one. Can you tell me in chat how many categories we offered? That's right, Christina. I'm just trying to see if we're all listening. We offer 7. I know I'm sharing a lot of information. Yeah, we offer 7. There are also options for other categories, right? Not knowing or not wanted to answer. It's important to appreciate that the racial and ethnic categories presented represent large and diverse cultural groups. So based on the categories selected, respondents should be offered the opportunity to provide more specifics. You should present the, yes.
Lacey has her hand up.
Hey, Lacey.
Hi, I just wanted to read some of the questions in chat.
Okay.
Chloe asks, so we can't change the wording to help with clarity for someone who doesn't understand the question. How do we ensure that interpreters are using the exact phrasing?
Beautiful. And how might you respond, Lacey?
I would say once you say the word as it's written in GetCare, you can absolutely then give clarity or rephrase it if someone doesn't understand. So you don't have to be a robot. We just want to make sure that the question is asked as it's written at least once. And then interpreters, if you're asking how do we know if interpreters are interpreting effectively or accurately, we don't know that, except that we use Language Link, which is a reputable agency, and they should be using interpreters who are going to be accurate. And then we had another question. How do you differentiate the ability to have simple conversations versus complicated concepts such as Medicare issues?
Okay.
I'm not sure how to answer that one.
Okay. Anyone in the team who wants to tackle that one?
I'm wondering, Miguel, before we tackle that one, Chloe had her hand up. So I was thinking, could we go back to Chloe's question and finish that one and then move to the next one? Okay, I love that. Thank you. And Chloe, where are you? My friend.
I'm here. Hi. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne. For example, like I have some clients who prefer to use a family member for interpreting rather than someone through, a phone service or whatever. So I mean, I can ask them if they understand the question if they're interpreting it, but if the concern is that we're saying these things exactly as written, I can't guarantee that someone's daughter is going to translate it exactly as written. So I don't understand how that's necessarily equitable or ensuring the exact phrasing every time. So can I not use a family member for interpretation, even if that's what the client is more comfortable with? I'm just really confused.
Well, Chloe, I think that I think you bring up a really good point. And I think you know, there are going to be aspects of this that are calling on your person-centered training, I think, in different ways than you've used it before. And you may feel that with some families, hey, you know what, I know they're not going to want an outside of the family interpreter. We're going to just have to hope that the family member interprets exactly and correctly. And in other cases, they may be open to it. So I think in a lot of these cases, you use your best judgment. And, you know, the fact is, I think you all really understand why we're doing this and what we're hoping to get out of it, which is some accurate information. And so I think that there will be times when, you know, you might say, hey, these questions are phrased in a specific way because we want to make sure that we're asking the same question of everybody. Would you be okay with having a non-family interpreter just for a little while? And they might say, no, I want my daughter to do it. And in that case, you say, okay, let's move forward. We're not going to always be able to do it at 100%. But you're in the position that you're in because you're good at what you do. And I think it's okay for you to make some of those judgment calls when you need to.
Okay, thank you, Anne. And can you then follow? Who is the next one? Oh, Alexis, did you raise your hand?
Yes. So in my small experience so far, when we were helping with a client, like let's say OHP applicant or FFM, on the phone, they immediately call the translator as well, and they actually go over the few questions, like their date of birth, their name, and their address, and so forth, even though I could actually translate. But they always insist that that's something that they really need a translator to confirm. And then if the client says that, oh, I'm okay, you know, Alexis helping me for the rest of the application, then we say, oh, goodbye, and then we hang up with the translator and we continue. So I wonder if that similar situation could be utilized in this type of questionnaire. Maybe, possibly.
I think that's a good idea, Alexis, too. And I think, again, you know, it calls on your judgment to, you can call the language link and get an interpreter and use that interpreter in the way that you think will make the most sense for that family, for that consumer.
And most of the time, the client is very cooperative. When you say this portion, we really need a professional interpreter to confirm, they said they understand.
I want to take a quick moment and answer, or have Diana, if you would like to elaborate your question in chat. We want to keep moving because we do want to have time for breakout session where we can have some conversation. So if you do have some questions, please put them in chat. And if we can't get to them today, we'll put them in the frequently asked questions document.
Cass, who was the person that you were calling?
Diana, she had the other question about kind of more complicated conversations. And so just know if she wanted to elaborate a little on that, and then we could get a response.
Diana, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. I'm trying to type it. Sorry.
Okay. Would you like to just talk via this way?
Okay. All right. So what I have is I've had people say they don't need an interpreter. They don't want one. But when I deal specifically with Medicare assistance programs and trying to go over and explain different parts of Medicare and what parts are able to help. it feels like they don't understand. And I know one time I did go ahead and add an interpreter, and I was concerned that I had offended the person, but I also want to make sure that they understood what I was saying.
Okay.
I've also had interpreters who don't understand Medicare, so I'm spending a lot of time explaining what I'm trying to ask and why. So
Sure, I am with you. I'm walking in your moccasins. And how would you tackle that one then?
Well, I think Diana, in somewhat the same way as with Chloe, my hope is that, you know, in most cases, you'll have situations where you're able to, you know, get an interpreter, or you'll know when you want to use an interpreter. But there are going to be some times when we miss. There are going to be some times when we make an attempt and the person doesn't understand. And it may be that you start the questions without an interpreter because they say they don't want one, but then they realize a few questions in, gosh, you know, I would like to have this interpreter. And then you go back. I think that the most important thing that you keep in mind as you do this is, you know, go back to that purpose. What is it that we want to get out of this? I think we want two things. We want to get the information, but I think we also want to communicate to consumers who are reticent to give that information why we're doing it. Because we want to learn who we're serving so that we know who we're not serving, and we can really do some outreach. I think, I don't know if this is helpful to anyone, but as we look at this data, we're not going to be looking at individuals and what individuals said. We're going to be looking at areas and looking at the population of people who are older adults or people with disabilities in that area according to census, and then looking at who are we getting as callers. And if there's a mismatch, why might that be? And so do we need to do some outreach into certain communities who haven't been contacting us to access services? Is there something about the services? There's something about the way that we're presenting it. Do communities not feel comfortable? So I encourage you to use all of the person-centered training that you have to try to do right by each individual consumer, but to also recognize that there are going to be some times when you don't have the perfect answer, you don't have the right solution, and you do the best you can and you try to explain why we're doing this. I love Olga's idea. She says, Diana, I wonder if you could kind of take the blame for needing the interpreter. Like, I'm the one who needs the interpreter, not you. That way the person doesn't feel like you think they don't understand, but maybe you're having difficulty. I love that suggestion because it takes the onus off of the consumer. You know, you can also, Dawn mentions, you can also read the answer options to help a consumer better understand. I want to bring up one thing and then I'm going to stop because I know we got to keep going. But after this, after these trainings, when we roll out on March 1st, starting March 2nd, we'll have communities of practice options that you can join in. So at an hour here or there where you can get on the phone, you can listen to other people who are doing the same work you are, asking these questions, figure out what's working for them, talk about what's not working for you, get suggestions. So we don't want to keep, or we want to make sure that you keep feeling supported even after. It's not, we're going to train you and then it's one and done. This is a skill you're going to be building and we want to help you do that. So please join us for those and let us know what your challenges are and what you're doing well at.
Yeah, and I also appreciated Cass chat enter right there. I love that. These questions have been validated. Absolutely. All right, folks. So Diana, I want you to know that when you were talking about Medicare, when I was going through that process, right, I needed an interpreter myself, translator, excuse me, because it was, some of this information was all new to me. So that's an example of compassion for yourself and compassion for other people. So I am going to try to cover a lot of slides here so that we can get to our breakout. So I was about to explain to you, based on the categories that people select, that respondents should be offered the opportunity to provide more specifics. Remember, I said that. And so you should present the available options, such as the one that you see here. If people represents themselves, or identify themselves as American Indian or Alaska Native, right? Many people who identify themselves as such are descendant from North, Central, and South American cultures. And so if somebody, checks that, then you can give them American Indian, Alaska Native, Canadian Inuit, Métis or First Nation, Indigenous, Mexican, or Central or South American. When it comes to Asian, right? How many countries do you think are Asian countries? Give me a number in chat. How many countries in the world identify themselves as Asian countries? Any guess? 45, 10, not sure. If you don't know, just say IDK. Thank you, Marisa. More than 20 different countries, right? So when a response of Asian is received, the respondent should be asked if they identify themselves, and you can follow that list, like Japanese or Korean or Mon or Filipino, etc., or other Asian. When it comes to Black or African American, many people who identify themselves as Black or African American, right? Chances are that their families originated in the continuous USA, in the US territories like the US Virgin Islands, for example, or the Caribbean islands like Cuba or Jamaica or Haiti. Or they might come from Central and South America, right? And they're probably, chances are, descendants from enslaved Africans. So you will also encounter people who identified as Black or African American that were not born in an African nation and immigrated to the United States, including, for example, people from, I'm thinking, who speak different languages like Spanish or French or Swahili. So when a response of Black or African American is received, then you give them these choices on the slide. Ethiopian or Somali or other Black or other African. How about this Hispanic? This is a group I represent here, Hispanic or Latino or Latinx or Mestizo. People of Hispanic descent live in almost every region of the world. Many who reside in the state of Oregon are descendant from families in the Americas, but they also may come from the Caribbean and European countries or US territories such as Puerto Rico. And they may or may not be Spanish speakers. And they also may identify as white, white, Black, or African American. So again, if somebody responds Latino or Hispanic or Latinx, give them, ask them Central American, Mexican, South American, or other Hispanic or Latino or Latina or Latinx. When it comes to Native Hawaiian, and we know we have more than 13,000 people in the state of Oregon who identify themselves as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, right? Many of these individuals are descendants from cultures that originated in Hawaii and current US territories. I'm thinking like American Samoa or Guam, or the Northern Mariana Islands, or the FSM, which is the Federated States of Micronesia. When a response of Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander is received, then you follow this protocol and you ask them to identify themselves as Marshallese, like from the US Marshall Islands or Samoa and so forth. When it comes to Middle Eastern or Northern or North African, people who identify themselves as Middle Eastern or North African may identify with their religious practice, such as Jewish or Muslim or Christian. And they also may identify themselves as either white, Black, or African American. They may also speak a variety of languages, as we all know, in addition to English, right? Like Hebrew or Kurdish or Turkish. And when a response of Middle Eastern or North America, or no, excuse me, North African is received, then you give them these choices, either Middle Eastern or North African. When it comes to white, people who identify themselves as white may be descendant from cultures that originated beyond North America. And when a response of white is received, the respondent should be asked if they identified as Eastern European, Slavic, Western European, or other white. So when a person provides a different response, right, or doesn't know, or refuses to answer, which there are many cases like that, then their response should be recorded under other categories. When multiple races are mentioned, then the respondent should be asked if they identified with one race or ethnicity as their primary, or if they identified as biracial, multiracial, or with not having one primary identity. They also may not know, right? Or again, they might not want to answer. So if the respondent does choose yes, then you will then go to the indication of the particular slide. Like you can see yes, or identified as biracial, and you record that information. So then let's talk about functional ability questions for everyone. So asking an individual about their functional abilities offers them the opportunity to share that they are living with a disability, right? Remember, this is all self-reported. It is important that we try not to use the term disability, right? Unless the individual first expresses that that is part of their identity. And when an affirmative action response is received, right, it is important to follow up by asking about their age when the condition began. We begin by explaining why we ask questions about functional abilities, right? Helping people really understand, that will help them really understand how the responses will be used, can help them feel more comfortable, right? Think about that Mark question earlier with the questions and encourage them to respond. So for everyone, folks, we ask about hearing, and we also ask about vision. So hearing and vision. And for everyone over the age of 5, right? Over the age of 5, we ask about physical abilities, and we also ask about cognition. For everyone over the age of 5, right? For everyone over the age of 5, we ask about difficulties with dressing or bathing. And we also ask about learning abilities. And for everyone over the age of 5, we ask about difficulties communicating. And for everyone over the age of 15, we ask about independent living, and we also ask about mental health. So I'm going to ask Cass if you can take 30 seconds to maybe repeat what you alluded to earlier, but that's very important in relation to Get Care. And then I will send the floor to Anne, who is going to give you an insight about what to do about breakouts.
Yes, so we had initially intended to show everyone a quick simulation of Get Care and what these questions would look like, but the conversation in these trainings has been great and hasn't allowed us enough time for that. So I'm going to put a link in the chat to the training opportunities that are coming up later this month for 30-minute sessions to come and learn for those who use Get Care, how the data entry will look and how those questions will change within Get Care. Anne, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, I just wrote in the chat also for those of you, because there are many of you out there who are not using Get Care, who will be who will be collecting this data from NAPAS forms or something similar to that. And I wanted to let you know that we are in the process. We've actually updated the NAPAS form, and we will be getting copies of that out to you within the next couple of weeks, and plenty of time for you to have them and take a look at them before our March 1st rollout. So at this point, we're going to split you into breakout groups, and each breakout. Oh,
you might have missed our conversation. Because of timing, we were thinking about keeping the group together.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I have texts and people. Yes, I did miss that. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and show my screen, and I'll show some scenario questions, and then I am going to ask for a couple of volunteers who might be willing to read one of the scenarios. And you'll get lots of extra karma points for being willing to read one of the scenarios. So the first example is a language example. And I will see if you can see that on my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yep.
Okay. So can I have 2 volunteers who will unmic, and one person be willing to read the caller and another person be willing to read the staff?
I'm happy to do that, Anne. I'll be either or. This is Cassie.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Cassie. You be the caller. Who do I have? Who will be the staff?
I can be the staff.
Okay, perfect, Olga. Cassie and Olga, take it away with your Academy Award-winning performances.
Just kidding.
Good morning. I'm looking for some information on caregiving supports for my grandmother.
I would be happy to assist you with resources. I have some questions we ask everyone. I'll be asking about your grandmother's race, ethnicity, abilities, language needs, and other characteristics. Your answers are confidential, and we can skip a question if you're not comfortable, though I need to ask them all.
Do you really need all this information just to give me some resources?
This information is helpful to ensure that everyone receives the highest quality of services.
Will my answers keep my grandmother from getting services?
Not at all. These responses have no impact on services or ability to receive benefits. These questions help to ensure we are serving all Oregonians and help us to ensure we address all the needs of those contacting us.
Okay, I guess you can ask.
What language does your grandmother use at home?
She speaks Spanish and some English.
Sorry, I lost my spot. Thanks. In what language would she want us to speak with her?
Well, she would probably prefer Spanish, but I can also translate for her.
That's great. In what language would she want us to write to her?
Why would you be writing to her?
If we were to send any paper resources to her, what language would she prefer they be written in?
Oh, I see. It doesn't matter. She probably won't read them. She'll share them with me. You can send them in English.
I know you mentioned you translate for your grandmother. Would she need an interpreter for us to communicate with her?
It's probably easier for her, but I'd prefer if anyone needs to call, they call me first.
Great, we can make a note about that. What type of interpreter does she prefer?
What do you mean?
Here are some type of interpreters: spoken language, American Sign Language, or ASL, deaf interpreter for deaf, blind, and deaf with additional barriers.
Well, she's not deaf, so probably spoken language.
Thanks. Is it okay to say American Sign Language, or do we have to say ASL?
That is a really good question. I think that's one that Matthew Friesen, who is from our OEMS office and is able to answer a lot of those questions, is not able to be on this training today, but we will put that into our list, and we'll check with him and make sure that gets in the FAQ document.
Not everybody.
Oh,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Olga.
I was gonna say not everybody probably knows what ASL is unless they use it.
Right.
And so if we were trying to make sure everybody has their options. So
absolutely.
Yeah. I think that I was gonna say, I would think probably we would want to say both, just the way that you did in the call. So Cassie and Olga, was there anything about this that you noticed that surprised you as you were reading through these scenarios? Or this scenario?
if you could scroll up a tiny bit.
Sure.
Please.
Is that good?
So yeah, so like, why would you be writing to her? So I mean, it makes really a lot of sense why she would ask that. So that was just kind of like, we might need to clarify that. That kind of stood out to me.
Yeah. Cassie, anything from you?
Having reviewed all of the examples across the board, I'm really interested to see how this is going to play out, just with the responses that you've kind of listed from the caller in the different scenarios. Like, why would you be writing to her? I guess I'm just curious how if people are going to become frustrated, or if there's going to be some calls that are ended because people are not going to want to continue to answer the questions. I think that's kind of where I'm at, if like just testing this out in the real world, as opposed to all of us that know we're going to be doing it. How it's really going to play out with different folks in different communities as well. So.
Yeah, and I think it's really important here to mention that, while we want you to ask all these questions, we also recognize that there are going to be people who say, I don't want to answer these questions. And you'll have the ability in Get Care and on the NAPAS form to just indicate that the person does not want to answer. But we don't have a global, this person chooses not to answer any of these questions, because we know that in that case, there will be times when people don't try to ask any of the questions. As we look at data from our AAA and SIL partners now, we notice that there are in some offices, a really, really low percentage of completion of the current race and ethnicity questions, because I think people have sort of gotten to a point where they're like, well, I'm just not going to ask this. And we really need to know this information. So, we appreciate that you will continue to try and hopefully, be able to help people understand why it's important. But we also recognize there are going to be people who say, no, I don't want to do this. And you have the option then to, to mark that the person's not interested.
So just to clarify, if it's okay, so if the person says, I just don't want to answer these questions, do we still have to, like, we don't have to ask the question, like, continue asking and having them say, I don't want to answer, I don't want to answer, I don't want to answer. We can just say they don't want to answer these questions?
Well,
or do we still have to continue asking the questions even if they said, I don't want to answer any of those questions?
I think that in Get Care, the questions are sort of asked by section. So I think that when you take the Get Care training, you'll be able to see kind of what that looks like. And my understanding is that, and Lacey and Cass, let me know if I'm incorrect about this, but that they will be able to say, I don't want to answer this section of questions. And then you move to the next section and say, well, this next section of questions is about this. And they might say, okay, well, I don't want to answer these either. I'm sure there will be times when people get frustrated and say, I don't want to answer any of these questions, but we continue to try. Again, it's a balance. Lacey or Cass, do you have any input?
Yeah, I would say that the best way to do it is to adapt to your caller. As much as possible, we do want you to ask all the questions, and sometimes you can just say, if someone says, I don't want to answer this, you can say, okay, you don't have to answer, but it is my job to ask all the questions. So bear with me. But you guys know how to read your callers. You're doing this every day, and can see what makes the most sense and what doesn't. But I think what we've been talking today is the spirit of why we collect this data. And so we're hoping that you'll understand the value of it and try and impart that to the people that you talk to, and help us collect that information so that we really can help each and every one of the people that we speak to get better service. So do the best job you can, and reserve the times when you skip over all the questions for when it's absolutely necessary, is what I would say.
Thanks, Lacey. Chloe, I see you've been waiting patiently. Would you like to unmute?
Yeah, thanks. So I mean, ultimately there isn't a good answer to this, but there's a perceived narrative. The agency that I work for, we're bound to a specific area of Portland that is widely white. And there's a perceived narrative that is not true, but it is what a lot of people believe, that because they are white, they will not qualify for services. And I can see these questions encouraging that viewpoint. And I know that we can say that it's not going to disqualify them, but I'm just concerned about optics, or like, I mean, I can try to reassure people till the cows come home, but there are people who truly believe that resources are reserved for other ethnicities, and I don't know how to navigate that when people are already angry because resources are so slim, and I already can't get people what they need as much as I would like to. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Lacey, was that you? Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're not gonna change anybody's minds. We're not going to get anyone to see things from our point of view on these calls. So again, the best thing you can do is adapt. But I would say try to be confident and professional when you're reading the questions, and present an air of, this is part of our process, and I'm just doing my job, sort of. But if you get resistance, then take an exit route. Take the one that makes the most sense. And again, try to get as many people as you can to answer the questions. But I think sometimes we perceive resistance where maybe we just need to take a different tack. And so I think just remember that you're not gonna be able to get through to anybody. So it's not really worth fighting over, not fighting, but I think you don't need to try and convince them that what we're doing is right. Like you said, some people just, that's what they think. So follow your instincts, and if it seems like there's going to be a brick wall in front of you, then take an exit route, but try to go into every conversation thinking that that you'll be able to collect the information, because it is so valuable.
And one thing I'll mention at the end that came up in a previous training, and I think it's really helpful, is you don't have to start your interaction with these questions. You can work with the person a little bit and potentially find a resource that they're looking for, and give them a little bit of what they called for, and then move to asking these questions also, to say, I'd like to ask you a few other questions because there may be some other resources, and part of that is this. So, if they call and say, I want to get my mom home delivered meals, you can say, I can absolutely do that for you. You can start that process, then you can move to these questions, so that way the person feels like, okay, I've gotten what I called for, and now I'm willing to take a little time and give you the information that you want. So that may be one tactic. I'm so sorry that we have to cut this off. Miguel, I wanted to give you an opportunity to say, to express any parting thoughts.
Yeah, I put a few tips in chat. I think I like to briefly summarize this. There's a person called Amy Cuddy, Cuddy, and she's done a lot of research about how we humans come out to others. And you are collecting data, REALD data, that yes, potentially might trigger something on people, right? Specifically if you ask them about race and ethnicity and different ability. And she says that we humans come out either warm or cold to people. And when we come out cold to people, right, people don't trust us. And so the point is, when you ask questions, right, manage your tone of voice, right? Always remain in that place of compassion and empathy, even though you have triggers and people are yelling at you or maybe, upset, the only person you can control is yourself. So I give you this tool. It's called B plus B equals R. What you believe drives how you behave, and that provides your results. So my belief is, I got this. I can control this. I'm compassionate. I'm not going to lose track of the purpose. And if you behave according to your mindset, you're going to be successful. Tone is everything. Instead of, how do you identify yourself? Well, people are going to get angry. So how do you identify yourself, right? It's different with the tone of voice. So that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say thank you very much for your presence. I feel very respected by you. And I felt like I earned my money with a lot of love today. So thank you, Anne. I'm going to give it back to you.
Okay, just want to remind you all to please, if you are entering data into Get Care, please take one of the half-hour Get Care technical trainings. Also, please join us for any or all of the office hour sessions that we'll have starting in March. It'll start the day after we roll out on March 1st. If you have any questions in the meantime, please reach out to your community services and supports liaison if you're an area agency on aging, or to any of the community services and support staff. If you're a Center for Independent Living or a partner, we want to hear from you and do everything we can to support you in this really pivotal work. So thank you so much for your great questions and for your engagement and participation. Hope you have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week, and we will see you soon. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.
Adios.